Hello everyone, and welcome back to Touhou 6, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. Last time we completed the main game and unlocked the extra stage, which is what we're going to be going through today. Now, I beat the main game on normal difficulty, but as you can see there are two levels of difficulty above that, hard and lunatic. With each of these levels, not only will it increase the number of enemies, the amount of bullets shot out, and the health of the bosses, it'll also add new spell cards to some of the bosses as well. But the extra stage is even harder than both of these. It's usually the hardest thing in the game that it's in. And as such, I want to put out a slight disclaimer before we go any further, because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm better than I actually am. What you're going to be seeing is replays that I did of this stage that I played that were originally slowed down to half speed. I slowed them down to 50% speed and played them like that. The reason I did this is because, as you're going to see, this stage is quite difficult. I think I've only really beat it once, maybe twice, without any sort of modification on my end. But I just wanted to say that because I don't want people thinking that I'm actually good at this game. Now, if you're wondering, the story behind this stage is that a few days after the events of the main game, probably about a week or so, Reimu and Marissa noticed a strange storm that was only centered around the Scarlet Devil Mansion. And such, they head off to investigate to see what was going on, and that leads into the events of the extra stage. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Here is the extra stage. Extra stage, Scarlet Devil Lunatic, Sister of Scarlet. Background music is Centennial Festival for Magical Girls. This beautiful music really belies how hectic this stage is gonna get. So these first few waves of fairies give us a good example of streaming, which is the technique that I'm using to dodge their shots. These fairies shoot a lot of shots that are aimed at you in rapid succession, and the way that I dodge them is by simply slowly and consistently moving to the side. It's not too fancy, but by doing this I'm actually able to control where the bullets go and make this pattern much more easier to dodge. If I dodge too erratically or too wide, then that would make this pattern much more harder to get through. Streaming is a really basic technique, but a really useful one. It's the basic level of controlling bullet patterns, and once you understand its concepts, you can create some really effective and creative strategies. The next part of this stage is 4 waves of fairies that come from the top of the screen. 2 come from the right and then go to the left, and the next 2 go from the left and go to the right. What you want to do is follow their movements so that you're taking them out as soon as they appear on the screen so that they can't fire off their shots. Don't worry if you can't do this perfectly though, it's still plenty possible to dodge their shots. You should also know that there will usually be ones that appear on the side that you probably can't get through, so be prepared for their shots to fire off so you don't get caught off guard. So here's where some people will do a little trick. What they'll do is intentionally keep their power gauge around the 120 level, so that when they defeat the first fairy that appears here, when they pick up its power blocks, it will nullify the shots of the next 2 fairies that'll appear, which is helpful because it can kinda be hard to dodge through these sometimes. If you can't perform this trick though, the way that I usually dodge through these guys is by moving to the bottom left of the screen and then moving back to the center. For the rest of the shots that appear here, what you're going to want to do is focus on any large clumps of bullets that appear so that they won't box you off. So for this fairy, what you're going to want to do is pay attention to the blue waves of shots so that when one is in front of you, you have plenty of time to prepare to get out of the way. It's usually safer to dodge to the right, but you can dodge to the left if you have to. Patchy's back as the mid-boss, and if you can believe it, she has even more spell cards for us. Here's her first one, Moon Sign, Silent Saline. What you want to do here is try and stay in front of her as much as possible, not just to do damage to her, but to also make sure that the bullet pattern comes at you as straight as possible. This makes it much more easier to predict and to dodge. Here's her second spell card, Sun Sign, Royal Flare. This is one that I'm almost never able to do properly. What you're supposed to do is let the bullets push you to the left of the screen, then move back to the center and dodge from there. But somehow I always mess it up and I usually have to use a bomb or just die. And this is her last spell card, 5 Element Sign, Philosopher's Stone. This one's really straightforward but really difficult. Just pay attention and try the best that you can, and don't be afraid to use a bomb if you need to. If you beat her, Patchy will drop an extra life. Make sure you pick it up because I guarantee you're going to want it here. These fairy shots are aimed at you and they take up a lot of space on the screen. We can deal with them by using that streaming technique that I talked about earlier. Wait until all their shots are fired off, then quickly dodge out of the way. If you move too much here, you're more than likely to get boxed off. The fairies that are next are very similar to the fairies that appear at the beginning of the stage. Their shots are a bit wider, but we can still deal with them in the same way by streaming their shots. Next, a few waves of these book enemies will appear and shoot a barrage of shots at you. Their pattern can be kind of difficult to get through, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward. One thing you might want to watch out for is that there are a few who shoot a bunch of aim shots at you, so to make it simpler for yourself, you might want to wait until all of their shots have been fired off before you start moving. And finally, there's one last wave of fairies. Deal with them same as before. The last one will drop an extra life, so make sure you pick that up. And with that, we are done with the easy part. Time for the real fun to begin. This is the Sister of the Devil, Flanders Scarlet. Her theme is quite possibly one of the most iconic in Touhou. Yuen Owen was her. Let's read her profile to find out a bit more about her. Ability, destroying absolutely anything. The Extra Boss, also the mistress's younger sister. She is a vampiric magical girl and has been the Scarlet Devil's younger sister for about 495 years. She cannot control herself, so she generally isn't let outside. She also doesn't try going out. She idolizes her older sister Remilia, but her destructive power, unconstrained, far exceeds that of her sisters. Although she doesn't often get angry or anything, she's always peculiar, which makes it difficult for others to understand her. Generally, vampires always attack humans without killing them in order to feed, but Flandra has only ever eaten food that has been served to her, so she doesn't know how to properly attack a human. Because of this, she can't limit herself and ends up blowing them away without leaving a drop of blood. Speaking of which, she doesn't even know that the things she eats were once living humans. Her daily meals are made to look like foodstuffs, such as cake and tea after all. Here's her first spell card, Taboo, Cranberry Trap. What you want to do is get in the center of the screen, then when the purple bullets are about to hit you, start moving downwards to let them cross in front of you. Continue moving downwards and letting the bullets pass by you until all of the blue bullets are out of the way, then get back in the center of the screen and rinse and repeat. Don't worry too much about trying to hit her, she'll get in front of you enough on her own. So, Flandra is Remilia's younger sister. Her profile says she's only 495 years old, 5 years younger than Remilia. And this makes her, just like Remilia, one of the few characters in Touhou that we know an actual birth date for. She was born roughly around the year 1507. Here's her second spell card, Taboo, Lava Teen. There are two ways you can deal with this one. The normal way involves you moving around her large swings, then moving through the rows she creates with her sword. This can be kinda difficult because there is a slight angle to it that can be kinda hard to figure out how you're supposed to move through it. If you can't do that though, there is a cheesy way to beat this one. If you get up top of the screen, there's an area where she can't hit you when she does the horizontal swipe with her sword. You'll still have to avoid her large swings though, but this way is much easier, but come on, can't you challenge yourself a little bit? So, kinda like Remilia, most of Flandra's non-spells are relatively easy and really just act as breathers in between her spell cards. Also, like Remilia, she is immune to bombs, but instead of just for one spell card, it's for the entire fight. This is her third spell card, Taboo, 4 of a kind. This is probably her simplest spell card in terms of bullet patterns. You can take out the copies that she makes of herself to make this spell card a little easier, and you can tell which one is the real Flandra by the circle around her, and usually I find it simpler just to focus on the real one to end the spell card as quickly as possible. So, due to her destructive power and mental instability, Flandra has never been allowed to leave the Scarlet Devil Mansion, and as such has been in it all of her life. Although she says she was in the basement during the events of the main game, which explains why we didn't meet her the last time we were here. Here's her fourth spell card, Taboo, Kagome Kagome. This is a really interesting spell card. She'll create these walls of bullets all around you and then fire off these orbs, which will cause those walls to start moving. You're probably going to want to stay in the same area for this one, move to avoid the large orbs, and then let the smaller shots pass by you. The name of this spell card is also interesting as well. It refers to a Japanese nursery rhyme that's about a bird in a cage, which obviously relates to this spell card, but also relates to Flandra herself. So you might have noticed the unique appearance of Flandra's wings, and that they look very different from regular bat wings like Remilia has. Some people think that this is because they are artificial wings that either she or somebody else fashioned, because she either lost her wings or was born without them. What's interesting though is that if you use a bomb, she will turn into a bat form with normal wings just like Remilia. This is her fifth spell card, Taboo, Maze of Love. This one can be quite difficult. What you're supposed to do is move around her in a circle following the gaps in her shots, moving counterclockwise for the blue shots and clockwise for the red ones. It's difficult because it requires both precise movement and precise timing and is very easy to mess up. This is one of the few places that I would recommend using a bomb. Even though it doesn't do any damage to her, you can still get through this spell card if you time it just right. As I said before, Flanders' theme, Yuen Owen Was Her, is probably the most iconic piece from Touhou. It's usually the first song a lot of people hear from the series. There are some people who are confused, however, and incorrectly refer to it as Death Waltz, probably because of a video that was uploaded a long time ago that incorrectly referred to a remix of You and Owen Was Her as Death Waltz by John Stump. Despite Death Waltz being a joke piece of music that was intentionally written to be impossible and incomprehensible to play, and sounds nothing like You and Owen Was Her and has nothing to do with Touhou at all. Here's her 6th spell card, Forbidden Barrage, Starbow Break. All the bullets move in the same direction, but they move in various speeds and are pretty close together. You're going to have to pay attention to what's coming in front of you, and you're going to have to be ready to make some tight movements. So, despite her not having too much to do with the main story of this game, Flanders' silhouette is the one that's on the cover of this game. This is probably because Zune has a fondness for her. He says in some of his comments that her theme is his favorite theme from this game. But despite that, she's never really made an appearance outside of this game. But this makes sense, considering she's not supposed to ever leave the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Here's her 7th spell card, Forbidden Barrage, Catadioptric. You want to get near the bottom right hand corner of the screen, as this is the relatively safest spot in this spell card. You also want to pay attention for any shots that will bounce off the walls, as these are most likely to catch you off guard. The name of this spell card comes from a type of telescope that uses mirrors to both reflect and refract light, which is fitting, as you could say that the shots reflect off the walls. This is her last non-spell, and the only one that I think bears any mention, as it is the only one that is kind of unique. These shots are aimed at you, so you want to stream them like we've gone over, but when you get close to one of the sides of the screen, you want to quickly move to the edge and then quickly move back to where you were, then start moving to the other side of the screen. Here's her 8th spell card, Forbidden Barrage, Counterclock. Here's another unique spell card. What you want to do is follow the hands of the clock as they push you to the side of the screen while also avoiding the other shots. The 3rd time the clock appears, you want to get to the bottom center of the screen to let both of the hands pass by you at once. This is her 9th spell card, Secret, and then, will there be none? This is what's known as a survival spell card. It's a pretty rare type of spell card that's usually only used by final or extra bosses. If you notice, Flandra has completely disappeared from the screen and there's no way for us to hurt her anymore. This means that the only way to get through this spell card is to run out all the time on the clock. Flandra leaves behind a ghost that will follow you around, leaving a trail of bullets behind it. The best way to deal with this is to follow along the edges of the screen. After a while, even more ghosts will appear, adding to the number of bullets. The best way to deal with this is to keep your movements slow and steady so that all of the ghosts are congening in one place at a time. At around the 55-second mark, the ghosts will disappear. What you want to do now is get to the bottom center of the screen and remember these bullet patterns. Red collapses inward, blue crosses straight, green crisscrosses on itself, orange collapses counterclockwise, and yellow collapses clockwise. Hope you got that, remember, because we're doing again faster. The name of this spell card comes from a novel by Agatha Christie with a very similar title, And Then There Were None. Without getting into too many details, the novel is about people trying to avoid being killed, much like we are in this spell card. This is also where the title of Flanders Theme comes from. UN Owen is a fake name used by the killer and ultimately means an unknown person. This relates to Flandra as she has had almost no contact with the outside world and is thus unknown to the outside world just as much as the outside world is unknown to her. And this is her final spell card and the last spell card of this game, QED, Ripples of 495 Years. Much like her sister's final spell card, this one only gets harder as time goes on, so you want to think twice about bombing here as it will only make this spell card harder. If you can, you want to try going through only one ring at a time, as going through multiples at a time can prove to be quite difficult. QED stands for Quod Erat Demonstratum, which is a phrase that comes at the end of mathematical proofs and theorems to mark their conclusion. Fitting, as this is the last spell card most people will see of this game, and as such, its conclusion. And that's all there is of Touhou 6, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil. See you guys next time for Touhou 7, Perfect Cherry Blossom.